About 4 months ago, I made a video talking about the degradation of video games and how they've progressively lost their quality over the years. I went from getting a ton of major AAA titles a year that delivered in almost every way possible and even exceeded our expectations in ways we could have never imagined, to mindless, overpriced drivel that's barely worth 10 minutes of your time. All too often, the best games released are overshadowed by the lowest common denominator. The garbage that were constantly shoveled by greedy, money-hungry developers without the slightest shred of integrity in their souls is what's thrown at us. It's a crying shame that when I ask my friends about it, they rarely have ever heard of the unsung masterpieces that are Dark Souls, The Witcher, or Ori and the Blind Forest, all of which are the best games I have ever played. Instead, it's the Call of Duties, Destinys, Battlefields, Forzas, Maddens, and so forth that claim the glory of being the biggest games of the year, despite being some of the most lackluster, mind-numbingly dull, and even in some cases outlandishly terrible games ever to exist. But why is it that year after year we're given more and more of these games? One would assume that the outcry against these shitty business tactics and blatant acts of disrespect towards the consumer would drive developers to try harder, but something has made this trend of low-quality video games only grow larger. What is that, you ask? The reason why developers do this is indisputably because of the gamers themselves. Throughout the years, gamers have let developers know that they are perfectly content with stooping as low as possible and buying the most uninteresting, low-effort trash imaginable. Destiny was one of the biggest disappointments of all time, filled to the brim with false advertising, lies, and horrid business practices. What could have, and by all rights should have, been the best game ever made. What with all the years they've allegedly put into the game and all the advertising they shot off well before its release, was in actuality the very definition of mediocrity. I won't waste your time going over all the reasons why Destiny is a gigantic failure in every respect, because many people, myself included, have already spent entirely too much time discussing the shortcomings of the game ever since its inception. Instead, let's focus on the very thing that made Destiny's business model a success: its rabid, idiotic fanbase. Never before have I seen a community of people so brainwashed that they will literally do anything and everything to defend this. Oh wait. Yes, I have. The need to justify their purchase has grown so strong that they will blatantly ignore every single valid criticism of the game, no matter who says it or how good of an argument the person puts forth. Criticize the story? Oh, well, it's a video game. It's not supposed to have a good story. Criticize the level design? Oh, well, they were just pressed for time, so it's fine. Criticize the shitty boss design? Oh, well, you're just bad at the game, scrub. I'm not going to waste your time trying to decipher why exactly these people are so hell-bent on defending something that they have no reason to defend, because the truth of the matter is that I don't know the exact reason why people defend things like this, but I can tell you precisely why this thought process is so detrimental. This sends a very clear message to game developers, and that message is this: you can fuck us all you want, and we will always defend you. Look at The Division, a game that's basically the less interesting, infinitely more boring, far more glitchy, less inspiring third-person version of Destiny. You would think that a game that's worse than Destiny would have received a ton of flack, but what happened instead? People, mostly imbeciles from the Destiny community like Dado, Cacus, and More Console, immediately leapt in the game's defense. I've even seen one popular Destiny YouTuber make the absurd claim that it's the fault of the player for not liking its boring, uninspired formula. What could have been a genuinely amazing game came out a shadow of its former self. Literally, look at the fucking graphics downgrade. It went from Crytek visuals to PS2. Or how about the more recent addition to the compilation of bad games? No Man's Sky was hyped to be an incredible new indie title, a $60 game that allowed you to explore the universe, visit incredible worlds, interact with wildlife, partake in massive space battles, destroy stations, choose factions, roleplay with other characters, and shoot robots and wildlife with friends. Guess what you couldn't do? Just about all of that. The game was the biggest blatant lie in the history of gaming. It made Destiny look like the second coming of the Elder Scrolls V, for fuck's sake. Sean Murray is now perhaps the most hated public figure in gaming, and I'm absolutely positive that there's just about zero possibility for Hello Games to have a truly successful title in the future. But somehow, some way, there are people in the world that are legitimately fucking stupid enough to look at a game that's as genuinely terrible as No Man's Sky, and they will defend the shit out of it. They'll ignore the fact that there's literally nothing to do, that the entire premise of the game's a gimmick, and that Sean Murray directly lied about the 99% of the game, and rabidly defend it as though their lives depend on it. The sheer level of stupidity that I saw in the comments section of my review for the game was astounding. Now sure, people can like even the most terrible games in existence, and more power to them if they can find entertainment that's something I personally can't. But there's objective truths when someone points out the lies, false advertising, and broken nature of a product and is rightfully angry about it. When the Steam page for No Man's Sky has a disclaimer about their refund policy, and their reviews are overwhelmingly negative across the board, that should be an immediate indicator that this game is a steaming pile of shit. Time and time again, we find ourselves in a situation where a bad game comes out and people will rabidly defend it for seemingly no reason whatsoever. Now, again, we can spend half an eternity debating what the exact reason is, so we won't bother right now, but it's really important that we understand just how bad this is for gaming in general. The response from people like this only serves as a reminder that game developers can do whatever they want and get away with it. It doesn't matter how many shitty Call of Duty games come out. It doesn't matter how many overpriced Destiny expansions are released that still fail to complete the game. And it doesn't matter how many times Sean Murray gets his stupid shit-ass faggoty disingenuous grin. If people keep buying these products and defending them, we'll see a complete absence of games that remind us just how good we can get. We won't have any more Witcher 3s, Dark Souls 3s, Ori and the Blind Forests, Skyrims, or Dooms. We'll be forced to deal with the mindless drivel in the form of Destiny, Recore, Quantum Break, and The Order 1886. If Destiny has taught us anything, it's that the standard for good video games has diminished to the brink of near non-existence, and only by standing up, putting our collective foot down, and saying no can we achieve the barest spark of gaming nirvana like we used to have. While I said we wouldn't speculate as to the precise nature of this sudden shift in the mindsets of gamers, I think it's appropriate that we look at the game that may have been the origin of the issue to begin with, the very thing that began this rapid decline in video games: Call of Duty. Once upon a time, Call of Duty was the gold standard for military FPS. While it wasn't the competitive giant that was Halo or the realistic behemoth known as Battlefield, the fast-paced gameplay, heavy reward system, and good map design made it an instant appeal for the masses and transformed it into a cultural phenomenon. Perhaps, however, that was the worst thing that Call of Duty could have ever done, for ever since the massive success of Modern Warfare 2, every game has been scrambling to reach what they perfected and make the gold standard, even if it means that they essentially ruin their own great game in a vain attempt to replicate the success of the Call of Duty giant. Have you ever noticed the extreme difficulty curve in a game such as, say, The Ultimate Doom as compared to Black Ops 3, or how the original Tomb Raider compared to Uncharted 4? Whatever happened to the days of challenge, to the days where games made you think, where games encouraged the player to use thought and strategy before heading off to the battle? Those games certainly still exist, but in far fewer numbers. One of the reasons why I think gaming has gone down a steep decline is because of the mindset that gamers are too stupid to take on these difficult games. Part of the reason why I love games like Dark Souls and the Swapper so much is because it tests my limits and my patience at every turn. The Swapper, though not a great game that does admittedly get very dull once you realize that there's not enough variety, held my attention for a long time just because I had to really strain to think of ways to complete the next puzzle. Dark Souls is a game that I love and hate. I love its extreme difficulty, but I hate when I die and lose all my progress, which for those of you that aren't familiar with this legendary franchise, is basically 99% of the experience. You're going to die more than you're actually going to kill things. But many games have followed the Call of Duty route of low risk, high reward. One of the most tragic examples is Halo. I've been a huge fan of the franchise since mid-2002 after the first game came out. I own every game, every book, every musical score, every comic, and can perfectly recite the entire series by heart. Unfortunately, the challenge in Halo has all but disappeared. This wasn't even necessarily a 343 Industries issue, because Bungie went down the same path with Halo Reach. Ever since 2010, the franchise has suffered a steady decline in challenge. Where the first two games were punishingly difficult, Halo 5 is possibly the easiest game I have ever played. The only hard part being a segment that's completely broken beyond the realm of imagination. Halo 4's multiplayer was a blatant ripoff of Call of Duty to the point where it looked and felt exactly like one. Hell, they even had the same loadout menu. Halo 5 certainly took the right approach by bringing the series back to its roots, but it still feels so easy with tight-knit maps, high-powered weapons, fast movement speeds and abilities, and high rewards even for the most minuscule of feats. I believe the same unfortunate fate befell Destiny. What could have been an incredibly well-designed game is possibly the easiest shit I have ever picked up. In attempts to appease the younger generation that can't be bothered to use so much as a single brain cell, developers have intentionally dumbed down their games in order not to bore the younger fans of the game. Why else do you see so many teenagers playing Destiny and Call of Duty? They don't want to sit through the process of going through the bestiary to find out what monster you have to kill, and then seeing which potion you have to use, gathering materials to make that potion, upgrading your weaponry, and giving yourself a variety of upgrades before going off to battle. They'll never know the joy and sense of accomplishment of this process and the true reward that comes out of defeating a powerful enemy, because the tragic reality is that as long as they can get their 25 kill streak and drop a nuke on the map, they'll be content. Games have progressively lost their challenge in order to lure in a younger, more impressionable crowd of gamers that find it too difficult to play games that are truly great, and only once in a while will try to play something like Fallout 4, boasting righteously that they can play games that are thoughtful and creative too, when in reality a game like Fallout 4, while not necessarily bad, is a baby RPG compared to the fantastic epic adventures seen in The Witcher 3 and Dark Souls. Hell, even the original Fallout games are better than this, but most gamers nowadays won't know this, because most gamers nowadays have never played the original Fallout games. One thing that's really been getting on my nerves are the people that invest so much money in microtransactions. We used to be sold full games at one point, believe it or not. Now we're sold games in bits and pieces, with even smaller pieces sold separately so that we can boost our way to the top rather than suffering through what I truly believe is a process designed to be so boring that you'd rather throw down real money than have to earn it. The worst part is that literally every game seems to be doing this as of late, even the ones that have no right or reason to have it whatsoever. Uncharted 4 has microtransactions that are basically fucking worthless and don't need to be there. Rise of the Tomb Raider has microtransactions to fucking challenge you. Black Ops 3 is damn near gambling, and Halo 5, while having a slightly better system, has $100 microtransaction packs. If you're going to be spending more money to get a fucking helmet that you aren't even guaranteed to get in the first place than you'll actually spend on the entire fucking game, then you should know that your process is fucked. It's not as though this shit will ever transfer over. Halo 5 and Black Ops 3 will become irrelevant with the next game release. So all of the money you spent to buy something so inconsequential and stupid as a pizza camo will forever be lost to the ether, and chances are you'll probably end up selling the game one day anyway. But that doesn't prevent people from buying them in mass quantities. When games that don't even have multiplayer to begin with are inserting massive microtransactions, then you should start to get worried. It's even got to the point where developers like Bungie will say that they won't put in microtransactions, but then they'll see the success from other games and put the pay-to-win features in their game anyway. Battlefield has also done this, so people don't have to rank up to get the guns they want. Rather than actually putting in the time and effort to earn it, developers find it easy to make a good $10 off the consumer with the promise of a new gun that, again, will be completely irrelevant come the next release. It's one thing if it's like the microtransactions in Dead Space 3 that are really only there for the people that can't be bothered to play more than 10 minutes because it's seriously useless to buy them when you can easily get everything you need by just playing the game casually. But it's something totally different when your entire system of customization is based around having to pay more money to buy it. If I can pay $15 for an extra 30-hour campaign in The Witcher 3, then why should I spend anything for a helmet that no one in their right minds would ever use? but gamers have said this is okay, because now even the most sincere, innocent single-player games have microtransactions to accompany their shitty multiplayer or to provide an extra challenge in the campaign. What we see in a lot of gamers nowadays is a rabid obligation to protect their purchase as though their lives depend on it. It seems odd that something as trivial as a video game would spark such an intense hatred towards another person for not liking it. What I truly believe to be the case is that these people feel so duped, so tricked into buying something they don't truly want, that they'll say anything and do anything in order to defend their purchase. To some extent, I can't understand this. There was a time when I was only able to get 1 or 2 games a year, so I had to really hope that those games were going to be good. In 2010, those 2 games were Black Ops and Halo Reach. While I did genuinely enjoy Black Ops, I only pretended to like Halo Reach despite my massive misgivings with the bad frame rate drops, terrible map design, god-awful campaign that completely negated the already established lore, and what I believe to be one of the worst multiplayer systems in recent memory. But because I could only get a couple of games a year, I tried to force myself to enjoy it. Despite detesting the game, I went out of my way to pretend to like it and get as much out of that $60 as possible. I defend it against true criticism that even I had, and it wasn't until a couple years down the road that I finally said, fuck Halo Reach, this game's a worthless piece of shit, and realized what I'd done. Nowadays I'm more cynical, I'm an asshole, and more than likely a horrible person, and every day I have people calling me a furry. This doesn't count. Now I buy games and watch movies and look at them with a critical analysis so that I can determine whether or not the game or movie is worth a damn, taking everything into account and basing the score I give off of how many of the crucial elements it gets right. For example, Destiny has good gameplay and good music. Doesn't have anything else going for it though. The Witcher 3 has beautiful visuals, amazing gameplay, fantastic music, great side quests, an addicting minigame, a phenomenal story, memorable characters, and DLC that's actually worth your time. While I'd give Destiny with all of its expansions a 5 out of 10, I'd easily give The Witcher 3 a 10 out of 10 because The Witcher 3 does everything much, much better than many games do nowadays. But for those people that spent years hyping up something like Destiny or Titanfall, who spent every day counting down the game's release, who went to the midnight launch and eagerly put the disc into their system, bouncing up and down like a giddy kid with a bag of Doritos and a 2-liter of Coke at their side, something that I usually do when I get a new game, and I'm almost fucking 20, what do they feel about the lackluster game they inevitably receive? Unfortunately, they want to believe that their game is the best thing since the birth of Betty White, and so they go out of their way to defend it irrationally despite the criticism it rightly deserves, then go on some dumbass network like IGN to confirm to themselves in their own minuscule echo chamber that their opinion is objectively correct as they eagerly await the next release from the studio that brought you something as shitty as Bubsy 3D. This sense of buyer's remorse is just another thing that makes game developers all the more ready to release another shitty product, because as long as someone defends their mediocre game, they'll keep making money and keep making mediocre games. Games today have become less and less enjoyable. I find myself going weeks at a time without playing video games, instead writing, reading, drawing, or doing something else that's actually remotely productive. So few good games are released now that when I complete the 1 or 2 rare gems in the gaming market, I have little to no motivation to play my other games. I like to say that Witcher 3 and Ori and the Blind Forest are the games that ruined gaming for me, because they're just so good, just so fantastic in every respect, that I can't help but look at my other games with disdain and disappointment. It says a lot when someone like me, someone who's been a hardcore gamer since I was a little kid, would rather be reading Stephen King's Dark Tower series, or George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, or hell, would rather be reading the Witcher and Halo books than actually playing the games. And it's not that I'm not a big reader, I've always loved to read and write, but gaming was once such a fascinating hobby for me that I would consume hundreds of hours of my time and effort into one game. Now, it's something I barely care about anymore because developers have made it abundantly clear that they don't care about the consumer. They'll shill as many terrible DLCs and microtransactions as possible because people keep buying them no matter how worthless they are. They aren't in it to make good games. They aren't here to create something deep and thought-provoking. They want to make a quick buck with the bare minimum effort necessary to craft the game, and the incessant, vicarious desire of the fanboys and weak-minded young gamers that can't be bothered to spend a little more time playing an intricate, creative game is only deepening the rift between developer and consumer, to the point where we may never have a truly incredible video game again. We're heading down a dark path in gaming, and we need to take the initiative and say no. We will not keep stooping to this level. We will not keep buying these terrible games because we want something more for our $60. We don't want falsely advertised drivel held together with run and gun segments and thoughtless QTEs. We want more games like Uncharted 4, The Witcher 3, Dark Souls 3, Ori and the Blind Forest, and other masterpieces such as they, because if we're going to shuffle over $60, we deserve a better product than no Sean Murray's and Destiny Rise the microtransactions. Thank you all for watching this video. I'm the Dishonored Wolf, and I'll go back to making dick and pussy jokes now.